Right, guys, hello there. I am Professor Wright over at Eastern New Mexico University, here to do another demonstration for my ceramics class, a clay demonstration. Today's is focused on putting handles onto pieces, right? Specifically maybe pulling handles, or yeah, like traditional cup handles or bottle handles, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm going to show three potential different methods, although just technically the second two are basically the same. And the first one is just sort of to show that there's an infinite number of methods. But in any case, yeah, the baseline for this is typically going to be something like a mug assignment, right? Something like this, just like a nice simple mug handle. But with the techniques that I show you today, there's no reason that you can't do something like some double-handled bottles, or something like this, or just a one-handed bottle, smaller stuff. You could also do sort of side-to-side handles. I'm going to hopefully get a chance to be able to show you to do this. It can go onto a bottle as well, or you could do something like this on the side of like a crock pot or a baking dish. Just these like dog bone type handles. Sorry, there's a price tag on that one. Or honestly too, it's not something I specifically demo, but there's no reason that your handles can't be kind of decorative, sculpted handles. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. But yeah, there's a infinite variety of things you can do with attaching handles, and for the most part, you know, our demo is going to focus on pulling like a nice traditional mug handle, but take these techniques and stuff and kind of build from there. So in any case, to get started, another thing that this demo is going to talk about a little bit, just in case you haven't gone over it in my class or in one of your other videos, is slipping and scoring, which is the technique we use to join two pieces of clay together that you've shaped separate. So in any case, we'll get to that in a minute. First thing we're going to need for this demo is, of course, some wet clay. We're going to need some water and slip. We're going to need the things that we're going to add the handles to, all that kind of stuff. Tools wise, you want sponges, stuff to do your slipping and scoring, whether it's a needle tool, serrated ribs, fettling knife for cutting stuff. Yeah, just your general set of tools, towels, stuff's good to have around. Yeah, just your general working set of tools for any clay making process. But yeah, so first off, I've got my wedged up clay. One thing I want to say from the get-go here is when I am making handles, especially if I'm going to pull handles, I do find that it's kind of nice to have your clay at a kind of a softer stage. Okay, so they basically just have a little bit softer clay for this process. Like imagine when you're wedging it and preparing this clay, it just feels a little bit like it's softer than your regular everyday stuff that you might throw with. You don't want it super duper soft, but just a little on the soft side would be right. Like maybe like you just threw it and then flopped it and then wedged it up again. Right, maybe that kind of thing. I don't know, but yeah, a little bit softer is my point. And yeah, so from here, oh yeah, and I guess your pots that you're going to add handles to should be at a nice leather hard stage. I talked about the stages of clay in the video on cleaning up the bottom of pots, and I also talk about it in my slides. If you ever are in my class and you learn about hand building, I talk about those stages specifically in those slides, so you should be familiar with it. But yeah, there's, you know, just wet clay. Leather hard is when it's like half dried out. You're able to pick it up and like kind of move it around and it doesn't squish, but it's still cold to the hand. You could smudge it if you wanted, right? It's still got water in it. And then bone dry is when something's basically like a dried out dirt clod. And then it goes on to other stages, like, you know, after the first firing it's bisque, and then after that it's glazeware after you fire it the second time, that kind of stuff. But yeah, basically if you want to review that, go to those other things that I mentioned, other resources, and just know, yeah, leather hard is where we want to be, where it's like halfway in between dry and like wet clay, cold to the touch, a little bit sticky still, yeah, but doesn't misshape in your hands. So anyway, have those pots ready to go. And then yeah, for making the handles, I'm going to start by showing you basically what I would call like the hand building method of making handles. And again, the whole point of this first method that I'm going to show you is to show you that it's kind of like you can do whatever you want. Any kind of, you know, if you're open to sculpted handles or whatever shape, there's really an infinite variety of ways to approach handles, as I've already said a couple times. So the first one I'll say is like what I teach my students would be like a hand building type of method for making a handle, and it would just be rolling a coil. Okay, just rolling a coil. And I like to roll a coil that is tapered at both ends, and I am going to get like two handles out of something like this. Right, I roll the coil. If I have folds or cracks cracks, I'll smooth them out, whatever I need to do. But yeah, just a nice simple approach to starting your first handle might be to just roll a coil like this. This isn't something you're typically going to see like a production potter do, but as far as when you're learning, no reason you can't do this, okay? I've tapered it on both ends because, like I said, I can get 2 handles out of this, and I tend to prefer a handle that is larger at the top and smaller at the bottom. There's no reason you can't do the opposite, right? Do a handle that is larger at the bottom, smaller at the top. There's no reason you can't do it even all the way, and there's no reason that you can't make it big on one end and then get smaller in the middle and then big on the other, or vice versa, right? Again, still within this, there's infinite degrees of variation here. But yeah, this is my first one that I would call like a coil handle is really all I'd say this is. Just a nice coil. And also note, it was bigger on one end than the other, and then I'm also going to flatten this because I typically like a handle that is wider than it is thick. Yeah, and I'll probably make it even a little bit thinner at the ends, just to like kind of almost like a tongue shape, right? This is how I start with like a nice simple handle. And then depending on what I want to do as far as the shape goes, I might put like I'm trying to remember how to do this. Yeah, like a 45-degree angle on this. If I want a really dramatic, like heart-shaped handle that goes up and then down, maybe I cut it flat if I just want it to be flat. But yeah, basically, I just take this coil. I've already started shaping it. You should have been able to see in the demo so far already. Yeah, shaped it as far as thickness and just overall shape. And then I'm just going to take this and very carefully, slowly keep shaping it until it's a nice handle, right? And again, yeah, I like it to be a little bigger at the top than at the bottom, but there's no reason you can't kind of reverse that or make it just like a perfect circle that's going to fit one finger or whatever. I don't know. Again, sort of your world on this, but yeah, that's a nice simple room. There you go. That shows you how simple it could be to make a handle. There's a little bit of cracking on the outside. I might take my finger, smooth this out, right? Get it ready, good to go. Boom, there you go. Handle done. Now of course it's not done because you need to slip and score this to your piece, right? And you might even want to shape this a little bit like rounded so it'll fit on your round piece. Let's say hypothetically a mug right here. It'll be round and we're going to stick it on. You're going to slip and score. I'll talk about what slipping and scoring is later if you're not familiar with that. But yeah, there you go. There's our first handle. That'll be a little small. Hard for me to fit multiple fingers in, but there you go. That'll do. I don't know. Let me show you another variation on hand building handles that I like to do. So let's take the same coil, right? I haven't flattened this one as much, but it is tapered, right, to be smaller at one end. And then I'm just going to take this and I'm going to shape it like I did the first one, but in this one, I'm going to pinch it, right? I call this a pinch coil or pinch handle, right? No reason that this won't work, right? I basically just, as I'm shaping this, I'm going to pinch and squeeze it so that I leave finger marks here. And I get a little ridge down the back. I don't know, I kind of like that. It's like a little spine, right? Almost like it has vertebrae or something. And if I want, I could even use dryer clay for this and let the clay sort of crackle and move, or I could smooth those out if I want, whatever. But yeah, boom, there's another version of a handle that was very simple to do. I like the look of it. It's a little rough and ready, but that's sort of fun maybe. That's your style that you want. Another thing that I like about this too is not only did I create this spine on the outside, I also, in doing that, will inevitably create a little bit of a spine inside, and then I'll just take a little water, sort of smooth this out. Boom, there you go. Once I get this on the pot, I basically have a handle with this little ridge on the inside that's going to fit perfectly into like the crease of my knuckles when I have my fingers in there. Boom, it's like a little bonus, like yeah, little crease spine for your fingers, right? And you can shape this to be more square, you can make it more circular, you can make it more tight, right? Again, sort of the world is your oyster when it comes to handle shaping, okay? And then with this, just one more note on, like there's no reason you can't start with this and then sculpt it to look like fur, and maybe this is a cat's tail that's attached, right? You put a cat sculpture on the side of your mug and this is the tail, right? Or maybe it's an octopus tentacle or something with little suction cups or something that, then the octopus is scarred. I don't know, right? For my class and for my assignments, I'm always very open to that variation. And I like this sort of demonstration to show you like some non-traditional approaches and just show you again that there's really no limit to what you can do with this. So, but from that, now, what I need to teach you next and I'll still get to slip and scoring later, but next I want to talk about pulling handles, right? Okay, so this is what a lot of people who learn from a traditional potter, this is going to be the main thing that they learn. And this is like kind of the core of teaching people to make handles, is how to pull handles. And I like to teach a couple different methods for pulling handles. First of all, I like to pull handles where you're just pulling them and shaping them from a lump of clay separate from the cup, okay? That's the first one I'm going to show you. And then I'm also going to show you that third method I was talking about is going to be pulling handle, but with it attached to the cup, and then you just shape it directly right there, okay? But yeah, first off, let's talk about pulling handles just from a lump of clay. Again, this is a real traditional potter's way of doing this for just like a nice, basic, traditional, smooth handle, not real sculptural or crazy. Again, yeah, and honestly, this is most of what I do for my handles, unless I do the crazy like armadillo thing where I sculpt something like that. But yeah, for this method, what we're gonna wanna do is grab a good bit of wedge clay. And again, on this one, you do want it to be a little bit on the soft side. This clay dried out from where I had it set on the canvas. That's okay. But I'm essentially going to set this up where I have like a knob of clay that I'm going to hold on to, and then a little tongue of clay I've already shaped, or coil of clay I shaped, that's going to hang down, and I'm going to just stretch this clay out. Fair warning, this is always a funny looking process. I'm a little bit self-conscious to have this video on YouTube, but you know, this is what it is. You feel free to giggle at home. I won't even know it's happening. Yeah, so anyway, I get my water bucket. I like to have my water bucket pretty full, and I will dip the handle into the water, and then I might dip my hand, right? And I'll just get this. This is honestly almost more messy than throwing itself, right? Water just kind of gets everywhere when I do this process. But yeah, in any case, I dip just that little tongue of clay that I'm going to shape into the handle into the water, and then I'm going to hold on to the clay up top. And yeah, I literally just start pulling downward on that little tongue of clay, and I keep it pointed down. I'll get back to that later. But yeah, I just keep shaping it. And again, I always say it's like milking a cow. I've never milked a cow, but I say that to distract you from what it might look like. Anyway, but yeah, so we're pulling the clay. I always say at the beginning that you're sort of like keeping the pressure light at the top, and then increasing pressure as you go towards the end of your handle that you're pulling, right? And that's to stretch it out. But then as you get further in the process, you might reverse that and kind of increase the pressure up top and lighten the pressure as you move to the end. This is so that then at the end, you're getting the shape, you're getting more like stretch on it from the top, but you didn't thin it out at the top too early, right? And I don't know if that even applies to like everybody in terms of how to do this, but that's sort of the method I have. The more concrete things I do want to talk about as far as like techniques and ways to do this is to make sure the whole time you're pulling this, keep it pointed down. I don't want, you know, for my students, I always say I don't want them like, you know, talking to each other or going to do something else, and they keep, you know, doing this sort of deal and like turning it, whatever, or trying to pull it like this, right? Because what's going to happen is every time you do that, you're weakening this point right here in your handle. And yeah, it's just going to start to cause issues. And then when you go to cut this off, it's just going to break or cause problems. So keep it pointed down. And the other thing you're noting, when I'm doing this method with the knob, I continue to spin and change which sort of side I'm pulling from. If you just keep the clay in the same position the whole time, you're going to end up with a curve on it. And it just helps if you continually sort of spin it. Another thing I see students do a lot, just based on I think the way they see this video, is they just use like their index and thumb and they squeeze and they make like sort of a flat handle. I do like flat handles, like I've already said, that are wider than they are thick, but you don't really just want to use the thumb and index finger flat like this, because what tends to happen is you'll get a really sharp like right angle on the side. And I don't know, if you like that, you can do that, but a preference wise, I think, you know, for the most part, it's nice if you have a more rounded, soft sort of side. And so for that, I would say, go ahead and put the clay all the way into that like webbing of your thumb and squeeze and let it be sort of soft on those edges, sort of pull and shape. You can do something where you like maybe run a thumb down the back middle, and so it makes like a little ridge. Some people really like that. You can make it more dramatic, less dramatic. But yeah, you got all kinds of methods. I like handles that are really like thick and pillowy. So this is already like kind of more spindly and thin than I would typically use. But it's sort of up to you preference-wise on that. And again, I've made it smaller at the end than it is at the top. This handle is way bigger than I need it to be. You will sometimes see potters use this method, and they'll make like a great big like 2 or 3 foot handle, and then they cut a bunch of small like cup handles out of it. But yeah, basically that's how pulling works and shaping it directly like from a lump of clay. And now at this point, right, I've finished this, I've cleaned it up. You can do things too where you like maybe take your fingers, dip them in water, make like a V shape. And then again, this will sort of soften that edge if you want, kind of go from both sides. Yeah, you've got different approaches to cleaning that up. But yeah, let's say this is done. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this. You'll notice I kind of go back and forth depending on what sort of cut I'm making. I might use the fettling knife. I might use the needle tool. I find needle tools are better for this sort of cut because the clay doesn't get stuck on it as much, but it does make a little bit less sharp of a cut. And notice now, since it's done, I went ahead and curved. I went ahead and laid the handle sideways and allowed the handle that I had pulled to curve, and that is okay now. And I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to cut it off, cut more than I need, and just set this here and have it ready to shape into a handle later. Again, this is way too much clay. I'm cutting a lot of that off, but boom, there you go. That's a good pulled handle, nice and smooth. It's that kind of handle is going to be great because it's like shaped by your hand. It's soft like your hand, and so it's just going to be great for your hand to hold. What I don't like about this method is sort of twofold. Number one, what I don't like about this method is now I have to sit here forever and let this dry up enough for me to cut it and then slip and score it to the piece. And I'm gonna probably distort it, have all kinds of problems. And then another thing, the second thing that I don't like about this as much is I've just sort of made like a general handle shape. I might be able to look at the mug that I'm gonna put it on and think about the shape as I'm forming it, but it's not directly connected. So I'll get more into that later, but the big bummer for me is always that I gotta sit here and wait before I can put this handle on. Now you can pull 15 of these at once and then kind of have them ready to go for 15 mugs, but even the hand building ones, you don't have to wait nearly as long because you didn't wet the clay, right? You just got to let this sit up a little bit, slip and score it to the pot. For this one, you got to wait quite a while. So that is not my preference. My preference is to make a handle just directly off of, like, connected to, shape it while it is connected to the mug that I am attaching it to. So let's talk about how that works. But before I get to that, I need to talk about slipping and scoring. I can finally get to that. How slipping and scoring works is slip is the sloppy, gloopy stuff that you're going to use as a sort of glue. When I'm slipping and scoring a bunch of handles or coils or anything together, anything that I'm joining, I like to make a little pile of slippy glue, right? It's not called water and slip. It's called, or water and score. Yeah, it's not called water and score. It's called slip and score. So we want to be sure that we're using good, goopy slip. It's like watery clay. We're not just using plain old water. And so this is a way for me to make sure I have that it's slip, not just water, right? Because I can make a little pile of it. And yeah, so that's the glue. But scoring, what is scoring? Scoring is basically just scratching the surface of a pot, right? Just scratching it up so that it is kind of roughed up, and then you attach the slip, boom, scuff it some more, right? And then you've got basically like the roughened up part and the sticky clay, and you're gonna do this anytime you're adding two pieces of clay together or connecting them. You're gonna slip and score both surfaces that you're attaching, and then you're going to use pressure to put them together. I don't know why I'm going through this demo as much because I'm going to demonstrate it on the cup in a second. But yeah, there you go. Both sides, then you're going to push them together. But as far as how you make the scoring marks, it is up to you. My favorite method, as you've already seen, is this toothed serrated rib. I like this because I can kind of grab slip with it and slip and score sort of at the same time. You can do the same thing with one of these metal brush tools. It's got like a needle tool handle, but it's a bunch of little metal bristles, right? And you can do the same thing. Grab your clay, or your slip, grab that and score at the same time. That works, but there's nothing that says you can't just use a needle tool, right? You can do that just fine. For the needle tool, you'll probably want to put on the slip first and then scratch in, right, like this, and just there's no rhyme or reason really to, I've heard people say you can try to make it as like a zipper and all that sort of stuff, but it's not really about like fitting the clay together as much as it is just roughing it up, okay? You don't need a ton of it. One thing I don't love about the needle tool is it's too easy to carve too deep for beginners, and that causes some issues. The other thing is it takes so much longer to get all your score marks in with the needle tool, whereas, you know, if you just take the rib, you go boom, 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 look at that, right? Nice. Lots of score marks. It just works better, but it's all up to you. You can use a fork, you can use a serrated knife, like a butter knife. You can use whatever. But yeah, the core is scratching and slipping, like scoring and slipping both sides, and then connecting them. So the method that I'm going to talk about last as far as pulling handles is pulling off of the cup. So to do that, I'm going to make a little tongue of clay, right, that I'm going to shape. Okay, here we go. And I'm not gonna keep like the big handle that I pulled from last time. I'm actually gonna cut it so it's just the clay that's going to be the handle, like a little tongue or lug is what a lot of people call it. My lugs are typically a little bit larger because I like big, heavy-duty handles. You don't need this much clay if you're doing like a thinner, more like spindly handle. Yeah. And again, no shame in that, but I'm just saying, it's my preference is like thicker, pillowier handles. Right, so there you go. I've got my lug ready to go, and I've got my mug right here ready to slip and score the piece too. So I'm gonna grab my slip with my serrated knife. I like to look at my pot and decide to put my mug handle in the ugliest part, right? If you've made a mistake, or have like a smudge or big finger mark in a spot, that's a great place to put your handle to hide it, okay? So I am slipping and scoring here. I'm also gonna slip and score. I'm gonna actually, in this case, just dip the end of my handle here into the slip and then score into that, right? You don't need a ton of slip, but you need enough to make it nice and tacky. There you go, there's that. Just gonna add a little more slip here on the handle. That's ready to go. So both sides I'm gonna join. And then actually the place where I kind of imagine the bottom is gonna attach, I'm not gonna score it or anything, but I will go ahead and put a little bit of slip down there to get it started, sort of softening up, okay? So now I'm going to take this and set it, before I've pulled it, right onto the cup. And an important note with slipping and scoring, besides just doing both sides, and not using too much slip, using enough scoring, all that sort of stuff, not using water, blah, blah, blah. All those is also to make sure you use good pressure, right? Just setting two pieces that you slipped and scored together and just sort of lightly touching them is not gonna make the connection that you want. You wanna use a little bit of pressure and get it really stuck on there. That's another reason I don't love attaching handles that I've pulled separately, because it's so easy to distort what I've shaped prior when I'm doing the pressure, and I don't like getting caught up in all that and stuff. So I like pulling off the handle or pulling off the mug because I can use lots of good pressure right here, not to worry too much about distorting anything because I haven't pulled the handle yet. If that makes sense. But I give it a little wiggle too. I just make sure it's really, really stuck in there, and I can actually basically finish this entire connection right here. I like to use a little bit of just water on my finger and like use some pressure, get this sort of connection point going. That's good to go. I'll push in a little more right here. It is up to you. Some students really like to smooth in the kind of like joints or connection points on their handles. That is perfectly okay if you want to smooth it. I really like to leave the connection showing. I'll actually almost like get rid of it and then recreate it because it just, I don't know, for me, I like having that look of like an attachment right there. The other thing is if you're ever going to get a little bit of like crackle or crack, like a fissure that's not cracking all the way through, but just like a little surface crack, it's likely to be right there on that connection. And if you smooth it out, that can be really frustrating. But if you're already leaving a little joint, you can just, or a little like visible connection, you can put a little clay in there or a glaze in there or something and hide it. It just works a little better because it'll just happen right there at that gap. So anyway, yep, I've got this connected, and now I'm going to turn this on its side and start pulling. All right, so again, I dip the handle first. I'm going to dip my hand after that. You don't have to dip your hand, but I always like to just be sure I have enough water on my hands here. I got real absorbent hands or something. But yeah, we're going to do the same method that we talked about with pulling from that like big ball of clay or like handle of clay. And we're just going to do the same thing, but with the handle connected to the pot, okay? And it's the same sort of deal where at the beginning, I use more pressure at the end to sort of stretch it. And then at the end, I might use a little more pressure up at the top to create a better shape or something that I want. And notice, again, the whole time that I'm working with this, I try to leave the cup sideways and make sure that handle is staying pointed down. And the other thing I do is continually rotate this, just like the other method. And I make sure that I'm making it as even as I can. I don't really get caught up on the handles being perfectly straight. You know, machines can make things perfect. We have the benefit of being humans that are asymmetrical and interesting. And so I try not to get super caught up in it, but you want it to look good. You want it to look intentional. So yeah, I work back and forth. I get the shape going. I use the webbing of my thumb to get it sort of soft on the sides. I continually make sure that the attachment is getting sort of smoothed out. I don't want that visible connection too heavy duty and thick. I want it to be sort of light, but yeah, there we go. Getting the shape. All right. Another thing that I do personally on my handles is I will go back in right before I turn the cup up and start to connect it again. I'll just work a little bit right here close to the connection point. And I like to make it a little thin so that when I turn it up, there's like a little like spot, I don't know, basically where your hand can fit perfectly. It's like a little kink in the shape. So in any case, yeah, it's like it actually gets wide, then thin, and then a little bit thicker again. But yeah, then another thing I do for the same reason is I'll turn the pot upside down just a little bit. Learned this from a friend, the same guy who made the mug I keep showing. And yeah, just adds to the fact that this, when I turn this up now, right side up, I got this little like kink right here. I don't know if you can see it too well in the video, but it makes just this perfect spot for my hand to go later. And now I'm gonna have to connect this bottom portion sort of right now. Good way to do this, I use the needle tool for this cut, not the knife, so that it doesn't stick, right? I cut that excess off and I wanna shape this. And what's cool about this method is that with this bottom connection, because I've already put a little bit of slip on the cup and this handle is like super slippy, you don't really need to score it, okay? It's already slipped and scored, got a really great connection up top. And so you can just, if you connect this right away, you don't super need a bunch of scoring and stuff like that. So I'm gonna just set this in here. I get it nice and even. Make sure it's attached. Start pushing it. Right, there you go. Good handle. It's a little bit squat for me. I'm gonna shape it in a minute. But yeah, that gets us started. Now, as far as this connection, we're gonna need to use more pressure to be sure it stays good and tight. But before I did that, I wanted to talk to you about a lot of people typically do this sort of traditional, what I call like the elephant ear attachment, where they just push their thumb in. I'll use it on this little guy. You push your thumb in and you just sort of rotate your thumb, right? And then you can clean the base, and it does really like a nice traditional like ear shaped attachment down there. I found when I was making a lot of mugs, if I was making like 40 mugs in a sitting, this got really tedious and I didn't love it. And it's sort of just, they all look the same, all sort of stuff. So what I started doing is a little more dramatic kind of flair. This is just a personal aside here. But I do what I call the fishtail or the whale tail, because that's funnier. And what I do basically is just make sure I've got enough slip here, everything's good and stuck, and then I just sort of whip my hand out while I'm pushing and connecting this, and it makes this just fun little like V-shaped sort of thing, or like I said, it looks like a little fishtail, something like that. I don't know, that's just my preference. That's what I like, okay? And I'll take my sponge, kind of reiterate that. It's got a little excess clay here. I can just pull that off with my thumb, get that going. Not a big deal, right? I like that. It's a little rougher and more rough and ready. Oh, I did forget, a lot of times before I let the handle sort of drop, I use my sponge to clean up this connection, but you can do it at this stage as well. But yeah, there you go. And now I don't love the shape of that. It's slumped down a little bit, so I can just take a little bit of water and dip my fingers in it and just be able to shape this a little bit further to make something I like a little more. It's good to do that from both sides. I pull this base part out a little bit further away from the pot because a lot of people kind of underestimate how much room you need down there for your pinky or ring finger if you're going to do multiple fingers in a handle. Yeah, sort of pull that away, make that shape a little more interesting, and boom, there you go. And then I might have to, if I use enough water, I might have to clean that up again. Okay, good. Get that one. Might have to use a little bit of pressure right here. All right. Kind of, because I pulled that outward, I might want to push down a little more on that fishtail, kind of redo that. But yeah, boom, there you go. Handle done. I've already cleaned the bottom, right? I've already stamped it. And then here, a lot of times I will take and put a little piece of clay right here in this little joint connection, like the elbow where the bottom meets, because right now it's got a little squinch right there where it just sort of squished down. And it's nice once the handle now gets to leather hard to be able to put a little clay in there. Let me show you an example of that again on this mug I've been showing you throughout, right? Just that little bit of backfill is what we call that. Just helps that little squinch or elbow, whatever, look a little bit better, look a little softer. But yeah, to do that, what I'd basically do is I'll put this pot that I just finished under plastic for like 12 hours, or right overnight, whatever, or during the day if I'm pulling handles in the morning. And then I'll come back, do that backfill after the handle has sort of set up and gotten a little firmer. And then I'll cover the pot again for a day to let the handle sort of homogenize with the pot. I don't just leave it out to dry like this. And then it is... yeah, I don't know, it's more like the slow dry helps prevent cracking and all that kind of stuff. And then after a day or two, I'll take the plastic off and it's good to go. Okay, let me show you one more thing before I call it. All of these, let me remind you, if you're doing any of these, you got to slip and score both the top and the bottom, and slip and score the mug and attach them, okay? And slip and score top and bottom. One thing I want to show though, when it comes to the method where you pull off of the like kind of ball of clay, you can do what I call the dog bone handle, or something that's basically like for casseroles or like larger bottles, that sort of thing. Sorry, this clay is sort of short. So let me go ahead and show you what I'm gonna do here. I basically shape it again, but it's a little more straight this time. And then I'm gonna dip this. I'm gonna start shaping it. Okay, pulling. This is not gonna be a perfect handle. Yeah, this clay is kind of cruddy. It's tearing apart from sitting here while I'm talking. But we're going to shape it, and basically for this, what I'm going to do is only really pull in the middle. I'm not going to pull all the way through after the first couple, and it's going to make sort of a dog bone shape, okay? Yeah, this clay wants to tear, but yeah, sort of a dog bone shape, okay? Yeah, that's not real pretty, but you can imagine what we're doing here. We're pulling it smooth, keep it rotated, and then I'm going to set this down. I can cut one end, right? And then cut the other, and you can see, right, it's large on both ends and then kind of small in the middle. And then what I might do is from there, set this down, right, and slip and score when this is set up, attach these, and I'll get a nice like kind of bow tie or dog bone handle that's large on both sides and kind of bends up in the middle. I know that was super duper fast, but I thought it might be handy, and it just shows you, you know, something beyond just mugs. Something I didn't say when I was talking about hand building too, there's no reason you can't make slabs and then cut like little ribbon handles out of that. Yeah, again, there's infinite variations on handles, but hopefully this video gave you plenty of options, and it really showed you the traditional pulling methods as well as slipping and scoring. So I hope it was helpful. I hope you enjoyed. I'll have other videos, you know, hopefully you watched the video before this on shaping. We have another video on shaping bowls and trimming that'll come later. So yeah, look for those. I appreciate you and I hope you enjoyed.